and gentlemen, welcome to the fan question edition of Straight Shooting Sports Talk. And I am your humble host, as always, Dujane Bland. And we have a great question tonight. Great question. It's a college football question. It's pertaining to the age-old question and the age-old talk about whether the SEC is the better conference. Whether they're still the dominant conference that they have been over the last couple of years. And that's a very good question, and we appreciate sending that question in to us. And the question goes like so. Lisa wants to know if the SEC, well, the ACC football rivalry here, who's the better conference? Now, she thinks the ACC is the better conference with Florida State, Clemson, but they feel, or she feels, that the SEC might be the better overall conference. Well, when you look at the overall SEC, ACC rivalry together, the SEC is 41-25 against the ACC conference. Okay, average score about 23.5 points, and ACC is about 17.5. Now, obviously, this year, the Clemson Tigers beat the Alabama Crimson Tide, champions. And this year, to support this argument on the fact that the ACC is on the come up, don't get it twisted, folks. The ACC was 10-4 this year against the SEC. That's 10-4 against these two Power 5 conferences, and that's including a 4-1 mark in the postseason. Now, the SEC went a combined 31-9 against all other conferences, but not against the ACC. Now, you can make the argument that this year just simply wasn't their year. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to share some stats with you over the last 3 years, starting back with 2014. The SEC was 3-5. Yep, that's what I said. 3-5 against the ACC. You go to 2015. The SEC was 6-4, 60% record, not bad. 2016, 4-10. This past season, 4-10 against the ACC. Now, the ACC has been on the come up. They have had several years of building, and to be quite honest with you, you can look at whatever you want. You can make the arguments however you want to make them, but the SEC has been top heavy. They have been very top heavy. And what I mean top heavy is it's been Alabama and no one else in that conference. And obviously, they've been winning a lot of championships over the last few years. But overall, it's just been them. And I'll use the 90s Florida State teams as an example. The ACC was very top heavy in the 90s, being that it was basically Florida State and no one else. This year alone, the ACC and the SEC met 14 times this season, and the ACC won 10 of those games. Now, of course, this year, they are the champions. The championship trophy, national championship trophy, is in the ACC. But I think you have to say that as of right now, the better conference is the ACC. Now you can talk all you want. I've heard the all the talk here in SEC country about the passion and how many players are drafted to the NFL out of the SEC. We've even heard talk this year of the fact that Alabama could beat the Cleveland Browns, and I'm going to be the first to tell you, as a guy who covers the NFL, those are the best of the best. And you may think that Alabama could beat the Cleveland Browns, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'll take 53 of the NFL's practice squads guys and mop the floor with Alabama. So that's not happening. But it's definitely that talk needs to silence from SEC fans. That doesn't mean that their teams aren't great. That doesn't mean, that there isn't great talent in the SEC. That just means that the parity that college football has been looking for, it's starting to show. And the ACC is starting to become a more well-rounded conference. You look at Florida State, you look at Clemson, you look at Duke. Wasn't necessarily this year, but I believe last year they had a very good season. There's a lot of teams that you wouldn't expect to be where they are, especially 2 seasons ago. The talent pool is growing, and the ACC is tapping into some of that SEC talent. And you have to look at some of the other conferences as well. They're coming along. They're not as dominant as these 2 conferences are right now. But the parity that college football wanted is starting to fan out, and talent is starting to spread out. Because you can't argue the fact that maybe 5 years ago, or 5 years plus ago, the SEC had a lot of talent in it. And the other conferences were just playing catch up. They really were. But as of today, the ACC is definitely the more dominant conference. Obviously, they have the national championship. You look at the 10-4 record this season, they're definitely the better conference. And you have to argue the fact that over the last 3 years, 4 years, the ACC has been on the come up. And really, you have to give the ACC their credit and maybe a little bit of extra due on top of that, being that they've been the more well-rounded conference. The SEC over the past 4 or 5 years has just been extremely top-heavy. Alabama, no one else when it comes to college football. So we'll definitely be looking forward to next year and what brings and what comes next year, because I tell you, with all of the talent that's coming out of these high schools, right here in on the Emerald Coast here in this southeastern region, you get to see a lot of high school football, and there's a lot of talent here in Northwest Florida, South Florida, South Alabama, South Georgia. A lot of high school talent, and there's a lot of talent. I mean, you can even go to the D2 games and see a lot of talent here in this region. And that talent is moving on to college football, spreading out through the ACC and the SEC. And we're going to see these teams get even stronger and stronger. And it's going to be interesting to see how the next few years roll out, because as we get further and further on, we'll see how this parity continues to play out. Will things start to even out, and we'll have less and less dominant blowout games and more of these, what the SEC likes to call themselves, beating each other up in their interconference play? Will that be tough games all the way around, especially between these two conferences? And you have to look at the Big Ten. There's other conferences that are coming up. They're getting talent. They're starting to put together some quality teams. There's a lot of great coaches in college football. So it's going to be interesting over the next couple of years. And I like the playoff system. I think you have to like the playoff system as well. Probably want to expand this playoff system, but it's what we have right now. And it seems to be working. I think that the two best teams played again this year in the national championship game. There's some things that, can be questionable. But overall, this is the best system we've had in a long time. And this is what we got for right now. So hopefully in the next couple of years, there'll be an expansion and there'll be even more teams brought into this playoff system that is amongst college football. So that's my thoughts on that. I really like what's going on, and what a wonderful time for those who are huge college football fans to be able to see what's going on between these two conferences now as the ACC climbs up the ladder to contest the SEC. And right now, the ACC is the better conference. Well, it's been another great show hanging out with you guys. We want to thank Lisa for that question. What a phenomenal question, and a deep one. A deep question. It's going to rub some people the wrong way here in the Southeast, and I like it. I like it. So we thank you for that, and we encourage all of you who listen to this show, submit your fan questions. You can get at me on Twitter at NotBland21. If you don't do the Twitter thing, we even have an email address for you. It's straightshootingst@gmail.com. That's straightshootingst@gmail.com. Shoot your questions over to that email address. We'll be happy to discuss them. We love talking shop and love talking about what you like talking about as well. If you are on my Facebook page, shoot me questions there. If they're great questions, we're going to talk about it right here on this show, because that's what it's all about. That's what makes the show. You guys make this show, and we thank you for it. But we thank you for listening, and this has been another edition of Straight Shooting Sports Talk.